course, today we're here for another live event to discuss really how to take care of your horse during the wintertime. I know, we kind of like to do this one a little bit early so people can help prepare and prepare as the winter weather comes in. But I know we here in Alabama woke up in 32-degree weather this morning. So
nice white frost.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So that winter weather might be coming a little bit sooner than we thought.
Right.
But we got a lot planned today, a lot to go over. Again, thank you for joining us. In the comments, let us know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and share the video as well. And before we get started, I guess we've got just a few little announcements. We've got, of course, Equine Affair coming up. And that will both me and you will be there for that one.
We'll have a presence there.
Absolutely. So if you're
In
planning
fact, I think we'll be at booth 523 and 524.
523 and 524. So if you're going to be in the West Springfield area, make sure to drop by. If you're going to be at Equine Affair, come to our booth. Let us know that you've been watching our videos, that you watch us here on Facebook Live, and we will make sure that you don't leave empty-handed.
That's right.
So definitely please attend that because we would love to have you. And also, since it is going to be just me and Mike there, we're going to have a little fun there too. We might do a little live from the event and have a couple of special things happening.
Sure.
So make sure that you're paying attention here on Facebook, and again, if you're going to be there, make sure to stop by.
And if you've never attended Equine Affair at West Springfield, Mass., it is one of the largest horse expos that takes place in the U.S.
Absolutely.
And it would certainly be worth your time, your effort, and your energy if you're a horse person and you like horses.
Absolutely. It's personally one of my favorite ones that I attend every year. I believe it is from Mike as well.
It is,
So it's a tremendous time, and we're looking forward to it.
It's a rather busy event, and we always like to stay busy, and we always like to see you across from the table so we can see you face to face and answer any of your questions for you. Sure,
Absolutely. Well, again, we've got a big presentation today. Of course, we got the actual presentation, but we also have giveaways, both live and, of course, our grand prize that we'll announce for Tuesday. If you're watching live right now, we do have the live giveaways that we'll be doing throughout, where we ask a trivia question and we'll randomly select one of the correct answers to win. That is for the U.S. only. Also, please make sure not to click on any links that someone might post in the comments or send you via message pretending to be us. When you win these contests, we announce them here live, and we do not private message you, and we definitely don't ask for credit cards or any other information. I know that always gets annoying, probably hearing me say that every time, but we just want to make sure that you guys are keeping your information safe, because social media can be tough with that sometimes. Well, Mike, I know that, again, we're talking about winter care. We've had a lot of questions come in. I believe everyone is ready to
go ahead and get started. Sure, yeah. In fact, when we think about winter care, we need to give some future planning to our winter care.
Absolutely.
And what we need to do to make sure our horse is ready for that cold temperature, for that north wind, for that ice, for that snow. And of course, we're giving you the impression that we only prepared a certain time for winter care, but a lot of things that we're going to talk about this afternoon is a year-round thing.
Absolutely.
When you get down to it. And if we do this on a monthly basis, then we're automatically going to be ready for the winter months when we get to that point. So what we'd like to do today is to call your attention to some of the things that are going to affect your horse during the winter months, or can affect your horse during the winter months. The first thing is dehydration.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we don't think about that, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in detail. A thing that's kind of tied in with dehydration would be an impaction colic to take place in our horse, and we certainly don't want that to happen. Of course, during the winter months, if it's extremely cold, our horses may have to be stabled or stalled quite a bit in a barn or a facility. And of course, if we're not careful, we've got some respiratory issues that we've got to deal with because of that situation. And then we've got all type of fungal issues that can take place because of the excess moisture that takes place during this time frame as well. And of course, when that ground is frozen, and it can be as hard as concrete sometime, we can end up with certain injuries, especially when it comes to soft tissue trauma or whatever. We'll touch on that. And of course, you know, if we have an older horse or a senior horse, often they're going to have aches and pains just like we do. You know, they have joint issues, and sometimes they're kind of brought to head during the winter months as well. And of course, another biggie that we're going to spend quite a bit of time on, hoof issues. And there's many that we're going to take a look at. Of course, another thing, if we have a senior horse or a hard keeper, then we need to be concerned about body condition score. We don't want to lose too much weight during the winter months as well. We don't think about this one quite often, but if you're in an extremely cold area, sometimes we have to deal with frostbite.
Absolutely.
As well. Another thing that we need to prepare ourselves, especially in advance of winter, would be parasite control. We'll hit on that. We need to make sure that our vaccination status is up to date before winter gets here. And then another biggie is dental care. You know, when we think about leaving spring and summer, we have this green, lush grass that horse is able to graze on and consume. And then when we get to the winter months, most of the time we lose that. And then we're going to some dry products such as hay, dry feeds and so forth, and grain. And so it's very important that that horse have proper dental care in advance in order for that horse to chew, which is going to head off a multitude of problems if the horse has dental problems.
Absolutely.
To begin with, okay?
Absolutely.
So those are some of the things. Some of these we'll spend just a minute or two on. Some of these other things we'll spend more time on. But I think one of the first things that we need to do in going into winter is we need to visually look at our horse, number one.
Absolutely.
And we're going to make an assessment. And Will, if you would put up slide number 1 for us, please, sir. Okay. And the assessment that we're going to take a look at is my horse, or does it have the proper body condition score?
Absolutely.
And we have 2 examples here that you can see on the screen. We have the white horse here that's extremely thin, extremely ribby. This horse would have a body condition score of about a 2. And then the other horse, the dark horse, is right the opposite. It's right the extreme. That horse would have a body condition score of at least an 8 as we look at those. So let's make an assessment. Let's determine where we're at before we head into winter. Now, one of the things that we want to strive for, Will, if you'll go to our next slide, please, sir. We want to be right here. We want to shoot for a body condition score of 5, and we want to maintain that score during the winter months.
Absolutely.
All right? Now, so if we go back to that white, thin horse, then what we want to do is we want to prepare that horse in advance of winter, and we want to try to increase that body condition score. We want to raise that, and it's going to make that horse much easier to pull through the winter months. Okay?
Absolutely.
Now,
Last thing you want is that white horse to lose more weight.
that's right. We don't want to pull any excess weight off the white horse by all means. And of course, that horse that had the body condition score of 8, it would give us the opportunity to pull weight off that horse. It would be much easier during the winter months than it is the spring and summer when we have all that green, lush grazing at that point in time, okay? So, If we have a body condition score below 5, such as the white horse that we have just taken a look at, we want to feed, number one, to increase that body condition score. Number one, we want to provide that horse and all horses with a balanced diet. Now, all these diets that we're going to provide our horses are going to be, in Will, if you'll pull up slide 3 for me, they're all going to be forage based. All right, that is the basis for the nutrition that we're going to provide our horses. Forage, grass base, okay? Of course, during the winter months, we're going to have to rely upon hay.
Absolutely.
All right? And we'll get into this a little bit deeper as we go through the presentation as well. And there's a reason that we incorporate hay and make it the basic part of the diet itself, because that's actually going to help us during the winter months as well. Okay?
Now, Mike, I did have a question from one of our attendees regarding body condition score, and they wanted to know, can the body condition, can that be determined due to genetics?
Yes, it can. We have certain breeds that are going to be much easier to maintain an overweight body condition score, such as ponies, number one. We know they're notorious for being overweight. We also have certain other breeds as well that are more prone to being overweight as well. And of course, the culprit that comes into play either in increasing a body condition score, maintaining that body condition score, or increasing that body condition score is energy or calories. And we've got to adjust that to get to the body condition score that's desired then.
Absolutely.
It's calories, okay?
Absolutely.
It's not the nutrients, it's not minerals, it's not vitamins, it's not amino acids, it's calories that we adjust, okay? And we'll talk about a product toward the end that's going to help separate calories from the needed nutrients that a horse needs daily.
Absolutely, and that's a good point. You know, as we're trying to remove the weight off these overweight horses in the wintertime, the last thing you want to do is starve them from a nutritional standpoint.
That's right.
So you want to still maintain those daily nutrients that are required, but cut the calories. And again, Mike, I know we'll handle that a little bit in more detail as we go on.
And of course, that brings me up to another point baesides the forage that we're using as a basis to feed that horse. Then we're going to incorporate a forage balancer, which is going to provide the nutrients that that horse needs on a daily basis. And then if you go back to the white horse, the thin horse, besides the forage, besides the balancer, then we're actually going to add either grain or some type of fat or oil back to that particular diet for the added energy and calories in order to help improve the body condition score in that particular horse itself.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, I know one of the biggest questions that we had was, you know, how do we keep our horses warm?
Sure. And that's a very important question. In fact, a lot of folks have a misconception as to what they need to do to help keep that horse warm during those extremely cold periods. And a lot of the misconception is, well, I'm going to increase the grain that I'm giving to the horse, or I'm going to increase the complete feed that I'm giving to the horse. But the reality is this, that forage-based diet, that hay, as that horse consumes it in the hindgut, through this microbial action, it creates heat to help that horse maintain that core body temperature that provides the warmth for that horse itself. It's not grain, but it's actually the hay, the forage that horse is actually consuming. Now, that's one of the reasons, or one of the ways that a horse is going to generate heat itself. Of course, another way that a horse is going to maintain itself as far as staying warm is its hair coat. And as long as that we know that at a certain point during the year, that horse is going to revert to putting on its winter hair coat. And I think it's up till about December the 22nd that horse is continually growing that winter hair coat as the days shorten. Okay, so hair coat serves as an insulation to help retain that body heat. And then the other way that a horse maintains that needed body heat is the fat reserves that it may have. So that's why we always want to shoot for at least a body condition score of 5, because there's ample fat covering there that also serves as an insulator as well. Of course, that white horse with a body condition score of 2 has very little of that insulation ability because there's simply no fat there to begin with. Okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, Mr. Corbin. I think we're actually ready for question number 1.
Question number 1. All right, let me
yes,
get
sir.
my questions out of here.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. So this is going to be our first trivia question for our live giveaways. Again, this is for the U.S. only. But what we're going to do is we're going to ask this trivia question. You'll have about 2 minutes to answer correctly. We'll go through those correct questions and randomly select someone to win the prize pack. And today's prize pack is one of our t-shirts, a Hoof clay, a finish, which are phenomenal products, of course, any time of the year, but
Sure.
especially in the winter when we have those wetter pastures, especially that farrier's finish, come in handy. And then our product for dogs, Breeder's Formula. So a little bit extra for that canine friend of yours. For the first question, what do you feed a horse to help maintain core body temperature? Again, that is, what do you feed a horse to help maintain core body temperature? You have 2 minutes, and again, this is for the U.S. only. I apologize to our international viewers today. Due to those international laws, we just are unable to do a giveaway. But you have 2 minutes, and good luck. In the meantime, we can ask Mike a few questions. Let's see. Okay, my horse can't eat hay. He only has 6 teeth in the back. He only eats grain, and I have to use a blanket. He's got Cushing's too. We're going to get into a little more about some of those horses as well.
Sure.
How do you get a horse to generate heat when he can't eat hay very well?
Well, that is a very good question there. Of course, the horse has dental issues to begin with. Of course, he has PPID or Cushing's, which is working against the horse. And I would imagine that the horse is probably on the thin side as well. Of course, that horse is also very much subject to a bout of laminitis as well. And of course, we know that there are certain chopped forages that the horse may be able to consume. I'd take a look at those first if I could. And then another thing that can be done is whatever feed you're actually feeding this particular horse, that you can do safely. If it can be soaked, that would help with the chewing process as well. I don't know the complete situation there. So some of those things along that line are some of the things that we can do. You just have a tough situation going on right now. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the questions that we had was, can the blanket get wet during the winter?
Well, if we'll spend some more time toward the end on this particular topic. But as you know, there are certain blankets that are waterproof. And of course, if your horse requires a blanket and you're in wet conditions, make sure that you purchase the appropriate blanket, number one, that is waterproof. I would make this point too. I don't like to put a blanket on a wet horse to begin with. Okay? And if you'll give us a little more time toward the end, we'll cover some more points when it comes to blanking in itself.
Absolutely. And I have seen questions coming in as we go. Of course, when we stop and do our trivia, we'll ask Mike questions. Some of those questions we may not answer right away because we know we're going to get more into that later on and probably answer your question. But if you hold tight at the end of this presentation, we basically just open it up for anyone to ask questions.
Yeah.
So if we don't answer anything through either the trivia or through the presentation, just hang on and we'll get you at the end of the presentation when we open it up to everybody. All right, I believe we've got a winner. The answer, what do you feed a horse to help maintain core body temperature? That could be forage, roughage, hay.
Sure.
Absolutely. And the winner for that is going to be Bob Reynolds. Congratulations, Bob. If you'll just email us at cservice@lifedatalabs.com. Again, that is cservice@lifedatalabs.com, and that is floating there at the bottom of your, scrolling down there at the bottom of your screen in the green. You can just email us, and in the subject line, just put live giveaway winner. We'll need your t-shirt size and your shipping address, and that's it. So thank you for everyone who tried out for that first one. We got 2 more trivia questions as well as the grand prize. And the link for the grand prize is also scrolling down there at the bottom. You can feel free to enter that at any time. Again, that is for the U.S. only. You can enter that at any time, but the secret code, which will double your chances to win, won't be given till the end of the presentation. All right, Mike.
We ready to continue?
Yes, sir.
Okay, of course, at the beginning, one of the problems that I had mentioned during the winter months is dehydration. So that leads me to our next topic, our next area to address, and that's water intake. And it's extremely important that our horse consumes the necessary amount of water during the winter months as well. And some of our horses like to consume less during the winter months for several reasons. Sometimes that water can be extremely cold. It can have ice in it. It can be frozen. And of course, we need to address that situation as well. Of course, when we have less water intake, if that horse is consuming a considerable amount of dry hay, some type of a complete feed, which is going to be dry in itself, we can end up with an impaction, and we certainly don't want that. So water consumption is extremely important. In fact, a typical 1,000-pound horse should consume somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 gallons on a daily basis as well.
Okay. Now, what do we do if we need to encourage the horse to do?
Sure, and there are several things that we can do. Number one, if we can heat our water, okay? And if we can maintain that water at about 40, say 45 degrees, that's more enticing for that horse to consume that water in itself, okay? And of course, another point here too, if our horse has dental issues, and that horse is trying to consume that extremely cold weather, if any of us have ever had dental issues, and we know what that feeling is like when that cold hits that particular tooth, same thing can happen with a horse as well.
Absolutely.
So let's try to maintain, say, a 40 to 45 degrees water, and there are certain heating elements that we can actually drop in our water buckets to maintain that particular temperature itself. Something else that we can do is we can increase the salt intake. Say 1 to 2 ounces daily for that 1,000-pound horse, and that should help increase the thirst or the consumption of water as well. Of course, we always want to keep our water buckets, our water tanks clean and fresh to make that enticing. And of course, I mentioned the tank heaters that are readily available just about everywhere as well. Okay?
All right.
And go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna. Are you ready to move on to the next subject?
We are ready. Yes, sir.
Right, just real quick, can we? You mentioned talking about the salt intake. What are some of your recommendations as far as salt providing the horse?
Well, what we recommend here at Life Data Labs is just plain white salt. If you go to your feed store or wherever you buy your horse feed, when I go pick up salt, I just ask for a 50-pound bag of white mixing salt. That's plain white salt. I provide that free choice to my horses as well.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, during the winter months, if I need to add another ounce or two on top of their feed, I'll do that, especially if I have one that's not consuming the amount of water that I think it should at that point. So, yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Of course, now we know with the winter, we get a lot of problems with the hoof. Something you mentioned a little bit earlier, between the bacteria, between the wet pastures from the snow, or even the snow itself or the hard ground.
Sure, that's right.
So can we get into some hoof care?
Yeah, let's talk about the foot of the horse and what takes place during the winter months. Some of the nasty problems that we may have to deal with if we don't stay on top of the situation. Okay, but as we've always mentioned, prevention is the key.
Absolutely.
It's a whole lot easier to prevent a problem than it has to address a full-blown issue at the time itself. So our goal is to have the best quality foot, health-wise, genetically possible underneath our horse at all times. And this is a year-round thing that we want to address, and not just right before winter, really. Okay, because if we only address it in the fall of the year going into winter, then we end up with a cycle.
Absolutely.
We end up with some improving hoof quality, and then when we stop that, then we revert back to where we were at if we have poor hoof quality.
And that's something we talk about too. You know, the hoofs that you're wanting for the spring when training is back on and you're riding more and so on, those hoofs are determined from what's happening during the winter.
Months previous to that.
Absolutely.
Yes,
it doesn't just happen.
No,
you know,
overnight.
This is something that occurs over time and will continue to deteriorate the feet and so on if you are not doing the maintenance that's required.
Sure. Mr. Will, let's put up slide number 4, please. Okay. This is a nasty problem here. It was created by bacteria that had invaded the hoof capsule. And during the winter months, I'm afraid that most areas of the U.S. and even around the world is going to end up with excess moisture. And going from wet to dry takes a drastic toll on the hoof capsule itself. When it's extremely wet, that hoof capsule wants to expand, it wants to pancake, it wants to flatten. The sole becomes extremely soft at that point in time. A lot of times we will end up with some stretching there in the white line area. And that stretching is a direct entry point for bacteria to take a hold, to grow. And as you can see in this particular foot here, the bacteria has actually undermined the entire sole of this particular foot here. And it's actually exited in the toe area. And what the farrier is having to do, he's having to pare that out. Absolutely. And the horse is having to grow a new sole underneath this old sole, all from a bacterial invasion.
Absolutely.
Okay? And there's some certain products, some topicals that we'll suggest toward the end that we can apply to that entire foot that's going to help with the wet-dry situation. It's also going to be an antimicrobial too, if we'll apply and use the product as well. Okay? Another problem that we have during the winter months that's going to directly affect the sole of the foot is frozen ground.
Absolutely.
And this frozen ground can be as hard as concrete. And of course, we know that if you're doing a lot of riding on this extremely hard surface, we can end up with some bruising, number one, as far as the sole of the foot, especially if that horse is barefoot and it doesn't have any protection. And if we do this long enough, then we can actually end up with a problem called road founder. It's just like riding a horse on the pavement, a hard surface, and over a period of time, this constant concussion can bring on this laminitic situation as well.
Absolutely.
So hoof bruising, laminitis is a problem. And of course, even with bruising, we can end up with a very ouchy, a very tender-footed foot as well. And if you actually pick up the foot, a lot of times you may not actually see the bruise itself, and sometimes it will require the assistance of your farrier or a vet, but through the use of some hoof testers, that particular bruise can be identified. And a lot of times that veterinarian is going to try to pare out that bruise to relieve that particular pressure, just like he would if it was an abscess at that point in time as well.
Absolutely.
Question number 2.
You ready for another trivia?
I think we're ready for question number 2. Yes, sir.
Let me find my questions here.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh. All right. All right. 2 minutes to answer this question. And of course, this is for the U.S. only. We'll randomly select someone who got it correctly to win another prize pack. And again, I saw someone ask about the contest. For these live ones, you just answer it in the comments. For the grand prize giveaway, that link was floating around at the bottom. It was lifedata.live/win. Just put that into your browser, hit enter, and then you can enter it there. All right, so for question number 2, the average horse should consume how much water per day? The average horse should consume how much water per day? You got 2 minutes, and again, this is for the U.S. only, and good luck. In the meantime, Mike, if there is enough pasture, is hay necessary during the fall?
Yes, I still like to provide hay free choice to a horse, yes. We've always done that.
Absolutely.
Even during the summer months, we would always provide some free choice hay just in case that horse wanted it. It was in front of the horse, yes.
Absolutely.
Yep. And typically a horse is going to consume anywhere from about 1.5% to 2% of its body weight in a forage on a dry matter basis, if we're looking strictly hay itself. Of course, if the horse is able to graze, then the horse is, if you just looked at the forage itself and it's green grass, then the horse is going to consume a whole lot more than that because of the water content that's there. Okay?
Absolutely.
So in other words, if you had a 1,000-pound horse and it was consuming 2% of its body weight, we're looking at about 20 pounds of hay on a dry matter basis. And don't guess at the amount that you're feeding. Weigh that to make sure that you're giving 20 pounds of hay daily.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Is there a difference between, like, the nutritionally, the winter grass forage and the hay?
Yes, it is. In fact, once we have a number one, if we're talking about the existing forage, the grass out in the paddock, once we have a good frost, a time or two, or a good freeze, then that grass is going to quickly lose part of its nutritional value itself.
Gotcha.
And if we're talking about hay, the longer that it is stored, it's going to start losing parts of its nutritional value, especially, say, vitamin A or the carotene that's in the hay itself. It's going to diminish, yes. And of course, one of the things that you can do is always have your hay tested. And that way you know what's in it. And that way you can add to whatever you need to ensure that you're meeting the nutritional needs of the horse on a daily basis. And if you'd like to have your hay tested, one of the easiest ways to do that is to contact your local county extension office, and they have all the necessary forms and all that to do that for you then. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, great. One other question that we have, well, we just had this one pop up too, but we had how much salt is too much salt?
How much salt is too much salt? The typical average horse is going to consume about 10 grams of salt on a daily basis, yes. Now, if this is the summer months and that horse is working and is sweating, that horse is actually sweating out that salt and the other electrolytes at that point in time. And at that point, that horse is going to consume more salt, okay? So just the typical average horse that's idle, about 10 grams on a daily basis. Yes.
Okay. And then one last question before we announce the winner. How long is too long to keep hay, to store hay?
How long is too long? After you have stored hay for a year, and if you're going on into your second year and feeding that hay, I'd really want to have it tested. Because at that point in time, I would imagine that your keratin or your vitamin A that horse is going to convert from that keratin would be probably none or non-existent. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right. Well, let's announce the winner here. So the answer to the question: the average horse should consume how much water per day? The answer was 10 to 12 gallons. And the winner is Gabby Latre. So congratulations, Gabby. Again, you can email us at cservice@lifedatalabs.com. That email address is scrolling at the bottom in the green. You'll just need to know your t-shirt size and your shipping address. And in your subject line, just put live giveaway winner. And again, we'll be sending you a Life Data t-shirt, a hoof clay, a finish, and a breeder's formula. So congratulations to you. We still have one more of our live giveaways. And then, of course, we have our grand prize giveaway as well that we'll talk about here in a little bit. All right, Mike.
Okay.
Well, I know that I've seen several questions regarding thrush.
Sure. In fact, that's one of the problems. In fact, to Will, if you'll go with slide number 5, please. We have a typical thrush situation going on here. You see the black on either side of the frog and the grooves there. If you look in the central part, back in the heel bub areas, you see a little area that's been damaged by the bacteria itself. If you also look around the nail holes, this foot has actually been shod in the past. You'll see the black, and that's just an accumulation of bacteria there. So thrush is a very common problem. The winter months is going to enhance that simply because of the wet, number one. And if that horse is being stabled or stalled quite a bit, and if we don't do a good job in managing the cleanliness of our bedding, then that can help contribute to a further episode of thrush in itself. And I guess if there's one good thing about the winter months, if it's below freezing, your bacteria does not like that. Okay?
Absolutely.
It's hard for bacteria to thrive and to live in conditions under 32 degrees. Okay? So if you're in a situation like that, if you're in part of the U.S. or parts of the other world or the world that where you have extremely cold temperatures, and if you have a horse that has a thrush problem, to me that would be an ideal time to jump on the situation, because Mother Nature is helping you to some extent at that point in time.
Absolutely.
Of course, we also know that it's very important to pick up and to clean those feet on a daily basis as well.
Absolutely.
We know that, okay? And we also have a couple of products that we will mention here toward the end that are antimicrobial, very easy to use and to address a thrush problem in itself.
Absolutely. And just real quick, I know we're going to talk about the products a little bit later, but for those who might be fighting that thrush or white line disease or so on, one of the number one things we always talk about is not putting anything caustic on that hoof.
That's true.
That's kind of one of the number one recommendations we have when it comes to thrush, is not to put anything caustic. If you look at the product you're using, if it says do not put on your hands, do not put on your clothes, if it burns to the touch, that's just going to harm any new healthy tissue that comes in as it kills the bacteria.
In fact, those caustic products are going to actually kill hoof tissue.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times we can end up with a cycle of thrush where we clean it up for a short period of time, our thrush comes back, we use the same product again, we eliminate the thrush, and then it's back again.
Absolutely.
Okay? So what's going on there is we're creating the food source for the recurrence of the bacteria to come back. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And for those who want more information on thrush, we actually do record these presentations and put them up on Facebook and YouTube. We've done a few videos on thrush now, and a few of the other problems of abscesses, white line disease, laminitis. You can actually find those under our videos tab on Facebook, or you can find us on YouTube at Life Data Labs. And those recordings are up if you would like to rewatch one of those. If you need a refresher, or if you haven't seen it and just would like more information, those are available to you to use.
Sure. And one other thing that let me bring up at this point too, Corbin. You know, if we have a good, healthy foot,
Yes,
and we have a good, strong hoof wall, we have a good, very good, thick sole there, and we have this tight sole wall junction there, those horses with those good feet are less likely to have
yes,
a bacterial infection, whether that's thrush or whether that's white line or whether that's an actual abscess in itself.
absolutely.
So as we mentioned, our goal is to create or maintain this good, sound, healthy foot.
Yes.
Okay?
Chances of a problem developing are a lot less likely if you're
That's
continuing
right.
that healthy
Sure.
stage. Okay. Well, do you want to talk about some of the disadvantages of winter?
Of course, one of the disadvantages of the weather that we just mentioned was this excess moisture.
Yes.
Okay. Another disadvantage is that it can create this chronic thrush problem, or it can create a new thrush problem if we don't have the problem to begin with. Of course, a lot of times our horses have to be stalled, maintained in the barn if the temperatures are extremely low. Of course, that can lead to respiratory problems sometimes if we don't have proper ventilation and if we don't maintain the cleanliness of our stalls as well. Of course, if we're able to turn those horses out during the day, then we have the excess moisture, which creates the muddy paddocks, and mud is very conducive to creating a thrush issue as well. And then, of course, another disadvantage of the winter months is that we lose the quality of our grazing in our pastures at that point in time as well.
Absolutely.
And then another thing that comes about during the winter months is snow.
That was going to be my next question.
Okay.
We luckily don't have that problem as much here in the South, but I know a lot of those viewing today are in the North and probably see 4 feet, regularly.
That's right. And thank goodness we don't have that situation here.
Absolutely.
Or if we do, then we would be totally
We'd be shut down for a while.
That's right. Yeah. But snow can create a problem for that foot as well, and especially if that horse is shod. We know that when that horse is traveling or moving in the snow, that it can compact, that it can create an ice ball in itself. And then, of course, if you can imagine if you had something stuck underneath your foot and you was having to walk on it, how uncomfortable that would be. Of course, if we don't maintain the ice balls or whatever, or this snow accumulation, then that's putting undue pressure on the sole of the foot, which leads to bruising and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
Okay? All right. And so there's some things that we can do if your horse is shod and you're in an area that receives this white stuff. We have snowball pads that can be added to the foot, which is a convex type appliance that goes underneath the shoe that's going to help pop out that accumulation of snow. If we need to expose the frog itself, then we have rim pads that will do that as well and help relieve the snow and keep it from accumulating as well. But keep in mind, it's very important to pick up, to clean, remove the mud, remove the snow, remove any debris. And the thing that we did not mention just a minute ago about thrush is that it's created from a form of bacteria that thrives in the absence of oxygen.
Absolutely.
So if we remove the mud, remove anything that's blocking the needed oxygen from the sole of the foot, then we're less likely to have the thrush problem as well.
All right, Mike, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
I know in our past videos we've talked about mud and how when the horse is walking through the mud and the feet sink into it, it can cause that suction type thing that might be rip off a shoe, or it might be rough on the joints, or so on. Will snow accumulation have that same effect?
No, but what it doesn't quite have the same effect there. It doesn't have that sucking that you're talking about there. What you end up with is like if you had a baseball underneath your foot. That's what you got there.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Which I get, then that wouldn't be good for hoofs or joints or anything.
Absolutely. No. In fact, it's going to work on the sole of the foot. It's going to work on your soft tissue, your joints as well. All of that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right, Mike. Well, what are some of the things that these horse owners can do when it comes to hoof care to help maintain that healthy hoof and prevent these problems?
All right, Mr. Will, how about slide number 6, please? And we have a farrier here, and so that's one of the things that we need to continue during the winter months.
Absolutely.
Is to maintain a regular farrier schedule. Of course, during the winter months, we know that our hoof growth may slow down to some extent, but they still need the attention that's going to come from a farrier in keeping these hooves trimmed, keeping these hooves balanced. And of course, if we let them go too long during the winter months and they're unshod, they're barefoot, if we get too long, then you can end up with some separation in the white line area. You can end up with chipping and cracking and all that. So very important to maintain a regular farrier schedule during the winter months. And if we'll do that, when spring gets here, then we're going to be in a good situation. If we pull the shoes off to reapply the shoe, it's going to stay there, and we're ready for spring and summer and ready to ride our horse at that point in time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I think we're ready for question number 3.
Question number 3, all righty. Grab my questions here. All right, the third and final of the live trivia questions. You have 2 minutes to answer it, and we will pick one of you lucky ones to win this, or win our prize pack. Again, this is for the U.S. only, and this will be the last of the live event giveaways. Of course, we still have our grand prize, so stay tuned because we'll be talking about that here in a little bit. What enters the hoof capsule that creates an abscess? What enters the hoof capsule that creates an abscess? You have 2 minutes, and good luck. Now, Mike, and I'm going to take a moment real quick and just while they're answering this, and just talk about our next live event. Our next live event, of course, we're going to be taking a break here in November between us going to Equine Fair and Thanksgiving and all the fun that November brings. We're going to have to skip November, but we will have one at the beginning of December. And I'm actually really excited about this one. But we're going to talk about some of these horse care myths. There's a lot of different myths out there that we hear, especially around the barns and the paddocks, and a lot of misconceptions on what can be true and what cannot be true.
That's right.
And unfortunately, a lot of these myths are harmless and kind of silly, and we can joke about it. But unfortunately, a lot of these myths are believed and can actually cause harm. And so that's going to be in December. I think we have a slide here. Will, do you mind popping up that slide real quick? Yeah, no problem. And that's going to be our next one, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here towards the end of the presentation as well. But the horse care myths is going to be Friday, December 9th. And so you can actually go to lifedata.live/FB event. Go ahead and register for that one. That's going to be a really fun one, and I'm really looking forward to that one.
And if you have a horse myth yourself, send it to us,
Absolutely, I'd love to hear them.
and we'll do a little research on that
Absolutely,
to see if it's actually fact or fiction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
You can private message us or just drop it here in the comments right now.
yeah.
If you have a horse myth that you're curious about, drop it in the comments. We'll take a look at it and include it, because this one's going to be a fun end of the year presentation.
Right.
And, I'm really looking forward to it. All right. Well, I believe we have a winner for this last question here. All right, so question number 3. What enters the hoof capsule that creates an abscess? And we were looking for bacteria, fungi.
Right.
We do have a winner. The winner is Sandy Anderson. So congratulations to you, Sandy. You're going to win the hoof clay, the farrier's finish, which again, fantastic products year-round, but especially here in the winter. The breeder's formula, which is a hoof and coat supplement for our canine friends, also helps with nervous behavior. It's a fantastic product. Use it on my own dog. And then our Life Data t-shirts. We'll need your t-shirt size and your shipping address. You can just email us at cservice@lifedatalabs.com. Email address is floating down there behind me or under me. And email that with the subject line live giveaway winner. And we'll be happy to send that off to you. We still have our grand prize giveaway.
Sure.
So hold on just a little bit longer. We'll talk about that. All right. Well, Mike, what do we do for these horses as far as shelter?
Well, that's a good question too, Corbin, and I think one of the things that we need to point out, number one, that a horse, if it's acclimated to the area that it's in, it's had time to adjust. A lot of these horses can be very comfortable outside down to 0 degrees, believe it or not, okay? And what it works against that, where we need some form of shelter, is if we've got some rain, if we got wind, if we got snow, then that horse is going to seek an area to get out of that situation itself, okay? Of course, anytime the hair on the horse becomes wet, it loses that ability to insulate, to keep the horse warm. That horse can get extremely cold at that time if it's wet and if it's 0 degrees. And like I say, that horse is going to seek out some form of shelter. And of course, a lot of us is going to have a barn, and stalls in the barn for those horses to go into, spend the night if necessary. Another good thing to have is simply a run-in shed. 3 sides to it. A horse can get in, out of the rain, out of the wind, out of the weather, even though it's 0 degrees outside, okay?
Absolutely.
And if we don't have the barn, if we don't have the roll-in shed, if we have a tree line somewhere, the horse will seek that out to get out of the wind itself. If we have big rolls of hay, if we had those in a line somewhere, that would serve as a windbreak for the horse to get out, at least out of the wind itself. Of course, it's still out there in the rain or whatever. So yeah.
Absolutely.
And of course, what happens here is when that horse becomes wet, it loses that insulating factor there, then that horse is highly dependent upon that roughage or that forage at that point to maintain that core body temperature. So that's one of the reasons that it's good to have free choice hay in front of these horses when it's extremely cold and the weather is harsh, like we're describing or talking about here in itself.
Are there any signs that a horse owner can look for that will show them that, my horse is too cold?
Well, one of the first things your horse is going to display is it's going to shiver, it's going to shake, and that should tell you that, yeah, the horse needs some shelter. It needs to get in out of the weather at that point in time.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And of course, let's go to slide number 7, Will, please, sir. And we see the horse with the blanket.
That's a little bit of a controversial
That's
subject
right.
there.
Now, do we blanket or do we not?
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a personal choice, number one.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the guidelines that we need to consider, we need to take a look at the winter coat
Mm-hmm.
on the horse. How much hair do we have? How much winter coat do we have? Let's take a look at the age of the horse.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a senior horse? Let's take a look at body condition score. Does a horse, is it at least a 5 plus, or is it a thin horse that likes the fat cover?
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a look at whether or not we have shelter,
Mm-hmm.
a place to get in out of the weather itself. And let's take a look at the climate conditions that are in that specific area itself. And I think those 5 points kind of helps us make the decision as to whether or not we blanket or we don't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Of course, one of the things about a blanket is that some of them are waterproof, some of them are not.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're in an area with a lot of rain, let's make sure that we use a blanket that is waterproof, number one. Number two, we don't want to put a blanket on a wet horse,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Number three, we want to pull that blanket off on a daily basis. We want to groom that horse, and when we put the blanket back on, let's make sure all of our straps are correct.
Mm-hmm.
It's applied or in the right manner, okay? So those are some of the things there. Now, keep in mind also that a horse is going to continue to grow its winter coat until December the 22nd. So if we blanket before that time frame, it's going to hinder the development of that winter coat.
Absolutely.
Okay? Another thing to keep in mind too is to whether or not we blanket or not, is this a show horse?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if we are showing during the winter months and we don't want that long winter coat on, then sure, we may blanket that horse specifically for that reason itself, okay?
Absolutely.
And of course, anytime if we bring a horse from a warm area into a cold area and it has not sufficient time to acclimate itself, then that would be another time that we would want to blanket the horse. Give that horse enough time to make that acclimation. And as a rule of thumb, in a situation like that, it normally takes anywhere from 10 to 21 days to make that transition to acclimate,
Mm-hmm.
from going from that warm to that cold itself. And of course, as we change the subject just a little bit, another thing that we want to do before we get into the winter months is our parasite control.
Mm-hmm.
We want to stay on top of that. And some folks will say, well, we need to worm every other shoeing cycle. We need to worm every 2 or 3 months. But the best way to determine whether or not we need to worm and whether or not what we're using as a wormer is effective is to have our veterinarian do a fecal egg count. And that tells us exactly if we have a problem. That tells us whether or not the wormer that we're using is doing its job at that point. So it would be worth the time and effort to do a fecal egg count as
Absolutely.
well. Of course, as we are coming to the end here, before we get into winter, we need to make sure that our vaccinations are up to date, especially with our older horses. We know that the immune system of our older horses can be compromised. If we have a horse that has Cushing's or PPID, we know that that immune system is compromised as well. So let's make sure our horses have the proper vaccinations to get it through the winter months itself.
Absolutely.
And Will, if you'll go to slide number 8, please, sir, it'll be our last slide for the presentation. One of the most important things that we can do too, at least twice a year, is dental work. Have a vet check the teeth, the dental situation, and of course we mentioned 2 times of the year. The second time needs to be right before we go into winter to make sure that we don't have any type of a dental issue going on at that point in time. And of course, we know that by doing this, one of the most important things that the horse needs to do is to have the ability to chew, to grind, especially when it comes to the hay that we're feeding to produce that needed heat, to chew that grain or that complete feed that that horse needs to maintain body condition score at that time. Okay?
Absolutely.
And proper dentation is going to help avoid a choke problem, and it's certainly going to help with an impaction problem as well.
Okay.
If we don't have a dental issue.
Absolutely.
All right?
Absolutely. Okay, Mike. Well, I know that going back towards body condition score and whatnot, what do we have here at Life Data to help support these horses during the winter?
Well, one of the things that we have when it comes to feeding is our forage balancer, and it's a product called Barn Bag.
The side camera off.
Okay, the side camera's off. Okay. And what Barn Bag is, it is our forage balancer, it is our hay balancer. And of course, as we have mentioned, the basic diet of the horse is grass, it's hay. And of course, during the winter months, we're relying heavily on hay as the basic diet. Of course, we know that hay is going to help produce the needed heat that horse needs. But the thing about any forage and any hay is not going to contain everything the horse needs nutritionally to meet its daily needs, and Barn Bag will do that. Barn Bag is made up of certain mineral, vitamins, and amino acids. We're only going to feed 3 ounces or a half a cup of product per day to a 1,000-pound horse, meaning this 11-pound bag is going to be a 60-day supply.
Absolutely.
So if we have a horse that has a body condition score of at least a 5, we're looking at forage. We're looking at a half a cup of Barn Bag. We're looking at clean, fresh water. And we're looking at salt.
Absolutely.
And that is the basic diet of that horse then. And then if that horse has any other needs or any other health issues, then they can be addressed on top of this. Let's say if we have a hoof issue, then another product that we can incorporate would be Farrier's Formula, which is our hoof supplement.
Absolutely.
And another product besides Farrier's Formula by itself would be DS Plus Joint, which has Farrier's Formula plus a joint supplement.
Absolutely.
It's a combo product there.
So maybe for those older horses,
Sure.
you would do Barn Bag and the Farrier's Formula Double Strength plus Joint.
That's right. And by doing that, we're meeting the nutritional needs of the horse. We're also providing nutritional support for the hoof of the horse and nutritional support for the joint of the horse in one feeding. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And one of the things to think about, especially if you have a horse who's, in the lower end of the body condition score chart, who needs that additional calories, if you're doubling up on those complete feeds, you're not only doubling up on the calories, but you're doubling up on the nutrients. So for those horses, Mike, who you would want to do the hay, grass, Barn Bag, is there anything additionally that we can add for the calorie standpoint?
Yes. In fact, if we have a horse that has a body condition score of less than 5 there, then one option would be an oil or some type of fat. Okay.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about oil, just plain vegetable oil works quite well.
Absolutely.
And of course, we would want to start out slow with the inclusion of that oil and gradually work up at that point then, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. And that is a very cheap source of calorie or energies that we can add to the diet of the horse.
Absolutely.
Very easy to do.
Now, what would we do for maybe any newborn foals,
Sure.
young horses we're still growing during this winter time.
We have one additional product. It is we'll call it a cousin to barn bag.
Yeah.
Okay. It is our broodmare and growing. It is specifically for that broodmare, and then it's to be fed to that foal up until it's about 2 years of age, and then at 2 we would treat that as an adult at that point in time.
You wouldn't feed barn bag with this one, correct? You would just do
Right, with our mare and with our foal and our yearling and our 2-year-old, we're looking at the broodmare and foal or whatever growing horse formulation here. Now, it's extremely important in our foals to get of course, genetics we can't do anything about.
Absolutely.
But to get the best foal from a health standpoint, from a muscular, from a skeletal standpoint, nutrition plays an extremely important role. And it starts with feeding the mare. We start there. And then when that mare is bred, that mare is going to feed that embryo that's growing inside of her with this particular product here. And so we're providing the mare with what it needs. We're providing that embryo with what it needs, that foal that hasn't hit the ground yet, okay? And then when that foal hits the ground, it's going to rely on its mother, that milk, for whatever length of time, 2, 3, 4 weeks, for what it needs nutritionally, that mare's going to feed that foal. And what that mare is feeding that foal goes back to what she's consuming, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
And then as soon as that foal gets big enough to start nibbling and eating, then we're going to start feeding that to that foal as well.
Absolutely.
It's a good product.
Absolutely. All right, well, for those watching right now, if you have any questions, we are starting to wind down a little bit, so if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. And since we've talked about Farrier's Formula Double Strength and Barn Bag, let's talk about the giveaway a little bit, the Grand Prize giveaway.
And what is it, Colby?
So this time around, the Grand Prize giveaway, we've got, of course, what we've talked about, Barn Bag, move this one out of the way, the Barn Bag Pasture Balancer, Pasture Balancer, along with a Farrier's Formula Double Strength.
Okay.
So we're going to give that package to one of our Grand Prize giveaways.
Okay. You get both of them.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Okay.
And then the other one we're going to do is a Farrier's Formula with the Farrier's Finish and Hoof Clay.
Okay.
And we'll have 2 people win this one.
Okay. Very good.
And so, Will, would you like to pull up our giveaway here, and we'll give the link? All right, so our secret code is going to be Winter Horse. And so there at the bottom of the screen, I believe it's scrolling down right now, it says enter our grand prize giveaway. In your browser, put in lifedata.live/win. Hit enter, and that's going to take you to the grand prize giveaway site. This is not something just for the live. This is for even those who are watching this Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You've got a chance to enter in this contest to win these prizes. They're going to have a total of 3 winners, and you'll just follow the prompts on the website. You'll enter the website using your email address, and then there's several different prompts that you can do to increase your chances to win. And one of those prompts will be, sign on to our newsletter, sharing the contest with a friend, visiting certain pages on our website. If you can do one of them, you can do all of them. The more you do, the more chances you have to win. So that's basically it. We'll go live Tuesday,
2 o'clock
at 2 o'clock to announce the winner. And so that'll be a great chance for you to try out some of these products. In the meantime, I just realized we didn't talk about Finish and Clay.
We have not. In fact, the double strength Farrier's formula, along with the Finish and Clay, is what we call our complete hoof care package.
Absolutely.
In other words, the Farrier's formula is going to provide the nutrients for that horse to internally regrow that old problematic foot. It's going to grow those chips, those cracks, those abscess problems out, that wall separation out, and replace it with a much better foot altogether as far as quality. And as it regrows this foot internally, it's going to thicken and strengthen the hoof wall. And of course, if that horse has had an issue in maintaining shoes between resets, that's going to help eliminate that situation. If that horse is ouchy on a hard surface, it's going to thicken the sole of the foot in the regrowth process, and that's going to give that horse more cushion and more protection on that hard surface itself. Now, it takes about 2-3 months to start this regrowth process that you'll see at the corner band. Take another 7, 8, 9 months to completely grow the old out, replace it with a new. The double strength farriers formula is fed at a 1/2 cup or 3 ounces per day, meaning that would be a 60-day supply for that 11-pound bag. Now, to get the best foot genetically possible underneath the horse, farriers formula comes into play from a nutritional standpoint, and then we have to address the environmental issues that are working against hoof quality as well. A lot of these take place during the winter months, the spring months, or whatever, and this is something that we need to do year-round. So the two topicals that we have one that is a liquid that's called Farrier's Finish. It is a very safe, it is a very mild product, it is a non-caustic product. It's a product that we would use on the entire foot of the horse. We're going to pick the foot up, we're going to clean the foot, we're going to cover the entire sole of the foot, we can drop the foot, and then we're going to cover the entire hoof wall.
Absolutely.
If we have a major issue going on, then I would want to use it at least every other day. Everything's normal, we don't have any issues going on, at least 1 to 2 times a week as a preventative measure. Okay?
Absolutely.
Then the other product that we have called the Hoof Clay comes in a little different form. It's in a clay, it's in a putty-like form. It's a very tacky product. It adheres very well to the sole of the foot. It's a great product for thrush. We're going to take, all we're going to do is coat either side of the frog in the central part if that's our problem there. If we have some wall separation, we're going to clean that out. We can take the clay and pack that into the wall separation as well. If we have that problem and the horse is shod, our farrier can coat the entire white line and actually nail the shoe on top of that, and that'll help clean that up between resets as well.
Absolutely.
Of course, where we have a shod horse, we have old nail holes. Those old nail holes become a direct entry point for bacteria. Anytime we get bacteria into the hoof capsule, we are destined for an abscess at that point in time. So the clay can be used to pack those old nail holes as well.
Absolutely.
Now, you might ask, can you use both products at the same time? You can. Use the clay first in your specific problem areas, and then use the finish last, the liquid, to cover the entire hoof at that point in time.
Absolutely. And again, when you're treating these hoofs, make sure you're not doing anything caustic onto the hoof. With Farrier's Finish and Hoof Clay, they're non-caustic. You can put them on your own hands, you put them anywhere on the hoof. They're not going to burn, not going to hurt new tissue.
One thing, Corbin, that I failed to mention too, if you have a thrush problem and you're using the clay, once you make an application, if that horse is not in a lot of excess moisture, you're going to have enough residual there for about 3 to 4 days. So this is not a daily thing that you have to do. So every 3rd to 4th day, come back and do another application if you have a thrush problem.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Now, the thing is this too, you don't have to have a problem to use the products.
Nope.
Use them as a preventative measure.
Absolutely.
And you're heading off the thrush, the wall separation, or you're heading off that hoof capsule becoming too soft because of excess moisture, are too dry during the summer months. So.
Now, what would you say to someone who wants to know why they would need to feed Farrier's formula along with those to battle something like thrush?
Where we have a poor quality foot, most of those horses, from research that has been done many, many years ago, are missing certain nutrients, such as a mineral, a vitamin, or amino acid. And Dr. Frank Gravely, that developed Farrier's formula many years ago, done research through blood work to determine what was missing in these horses that had the problem feet. And so that's how he put that product together to meet those needs, to allow the horse to grow optimum dermal tissue, connective tissue, in other words, to regrow the foot internally. And we haven't mentioned this, but Farrier's formula will target all dermal tissue. So not only does it work on the foot, it works on the skin of the horse, it works on hair coat, works on mane, tail, it works on the connective side of the joint itself to help improve that. So there's multiple benefits in feeding Farrier's formula simply, and not just for the foot itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, if we do have time for a few questions, so if you have a question, please drop it in. We do have one right here. They would like to know what we would consider an old horse. Age, what do we see? When do we know when that horse has gotten into that old age standpoint?
What is an old horse? That's well, you know, if this was several years ago, an old horse might have been 10, 11, 12. But our horses today live a much longer life. In fact, we have horses that will live 35, 38, 40 years today. So, in my opinion, when a horse gets to the point where it has problems from arthritis, and that can involve a young horse today, I'm afraid to say, but most of the time anywhere around 15 years of age, 12 to 15, then we're going to have a change there in those horses. And when we reach that age, say 12, 14, 15, for whatever reason, that horse is not able to metabolize and to utilize what it was consuming nutritionally in its earlier days. And that's when we start to see some issues when it comes to joints, when it comes to hoofs, simply because it's missing some items at that point. And that's where barn bag plays a critical role. That's where Farrier's formula plays a critical role to provide those horses at that age, at that point in time, with what it needs nutritionally, that it's missing at that point. Yeah.
But yet feeding them early on is still beneficial to help.
That's right. In fact, feeding the DS plus joint at an early age is going to help prolong the usefulness of that horse.
Absolutely.
You know, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So, yeah.
Let's throw up our next event one more time. Again, our next event will be Horse Care Myths. That'll be in December. You can go to lifedata.live/FB event. Just mark yourself as going to get updates and any changes or anything that happens, you'll be notified. And we're going to have fun with this one. You know, this one, of course, we have fun with them all.
Sure.
But this one we're going to talk about some of those silly myths. We're going to talk about some of those myths that are unfortunately still believed and done today. If you have a myth that you're interested in knowing, send us a comment, send us a message, let us know, and we'll be happy to take a look at that as we get in and start preparing for this presentation. So again, that's going to be in December.
The 9th.
Absolutely.
2 in the afternoon, Central Time.
Yep. And of course, we'll be skipping November because Mike and I will be at Equine Affair. Again, Equine Affair will be November 10th through the 13th in West Springfield, Massachusetts. So come visit us at our booths And let us know that you're watching us here live, that you watch some of our lives, or follow us on Facebook, and we'll make sure that you do not leave empty-handed. So we're going to have a fun time with that as
Sure.
well. All right. Well, we got one last question here. Is mineralized salt better than white salt?
Our preference here is just plain white salt. If you are feeding a balanced diet to begin with, you don't necessarily need the added minerals that's going to be in a salt block.
Absolutely.
Okay. Of course, what's in the salt block is going to be trace minerals sometime, or in most cases, yes. Yep.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to close out for the day.
And we want to thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Always. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Yeah, and we hope you have a great and blessed Thanksgiving that's coming up as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And stay warm.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you much.